So we will get started with the first candidate forum for this evening. Thank you everyone who's joining us live here today in the Moorhead Library. We appreciate it. My name is Bart Edrick from the League of Women Voters of the Red River Valley, your sponsors for this evening's event. I will be the moderator for this first candidate forum. We've got some people with cameras and recording equipment from MCAM that are recording the forum, which will be played back later and posted on the League of Women Voters Red River Valley Facebook page, and wherever else we can get people to do it. The League of Women Voters is a nonpartisan political organization which encourages informed and active participation in government, works to increase understanding of major public policy issues, and influences public policy through education and advocacy. If you'd like to learn more about the League, please visit our website or find us on Facebook. We also have some brochures over on the table. You can talk to one of our volunteers here tonight as well. The League of Women Voters sponsors candidate forums to provide the public with an opportunity to hear candidates discuss the issues that are important to members of the public. The League is a nonpartisan organization that does not support or oppose any political party or candidate. The views expressed in each forum are those of the candidates, not those of the League of Women Voters. The League of Women Voters posts complete, unedited recordings of forums. Editing is authorized only for official media reporting. Excerpted or edited clips of candidate forums may not be used for partisan political purposes. Thank you again to the library for providing a wonderful space tonight. And here is how we will work this forum for the evening. You've been handed cards by our volunteers with something to write with, and this is how you submit questions. And this is how the candidates are able to answer your questions if you give us something. So please write questions and just hold it up, and one of our volunteers will pick it up and bring it up to me to be read to the candidates. We screen only for clarity and occasionally combine similar questions for time, basically. And all candidates have the opportunity to address every question asked. Tonight, our candidates are Jenna Cayley and Paul Kravinoff. Both of them are candidates for the Clay County Commission District 1. And they will each be giving 2-minute opening remarks, and then we'll have 1 minute after to answer each question. And at the close, we'll do 2 minutes of closing, or 1 minute each for closing at that time. There is a timer. We'll show you signs and give you a bell if you run too far past. So there's only 2 of you, so we will not be real strict. Okay. And even if you do hear the bell, please go ahead and complete your sentence. We will start with opening statements with Jenna Cayley.
Thank you. And thank you so much to the League of Women Voters, MCAM, for recording this event in the Moorhead Library for this opportunity tonight. It has been a real honor to serve as your county commissioner the last 2 years. I've really loved working for you in this role. In the last 22 months, I have advanced a variety of initiatives to increase our child care capacity, to seek better outcomes for those needing mental health care and crisis services, to elevate minority voices and promote the economic development of our county. I've built a reputation as a bridge builder, a connector, someone who can advocate for the diverse needs of our community and who does so with fiscal responsibility. I've also worked for our public library system for almost 15 years, and that has been an invaluable experience to understand the diverse needs of our community and the wide spectrum of desires and interests that walk through those doors. Connecting people to the resources they need to thrive is a core value of mine, and as your commissioner, I use that passion to make sure that we have the resources and services that people need. and where there are gaps or barriers to fight for change. I was honored to have your support 2 years ago, and I ask for your vote again this fall so that I can keep the momentum going. Thank you.
Thank you. Paul Kramerhoff.
My name is Paul Kramerhoff, and again, I want to thank the Women Voters League and everyone else for attending. I look forward to our discussion over the next half hour. Just some quick background. I'm a lifelong Clay County resident and a business owner. For the past 37 years, I've been elected to the Clay County Soil and Water as a supervisor, and I'm currently the State Association president. Also, I've been a local realtor in the Moorhead area in Clay County for the last 34 years, while serving actively on the state and local boards. These long-term commitments have strengthened my skills in relationship building, strategic thinking, and policy development, while working closely with local and state government agencies and legislators. If elected Clay County Commissioner, I am well equipped to meet the duties of oversight, budget determination, and guidance of policies. I am committed to making Clay County secure and resilient to the many issues, mandates, and challenges set before us. And together, we can all work toward building and maintaining a healthy community and call it a great place to be proud of to live. Thank you.
Thank you. Our first question, we'll start with Paul. 1 minute. Moorhead has a growing homeless population and is a serious public concern. What are your ideas and strategies for addressing homelessness and the need for homeless individuals and public health in Moorhead?
Well, it certainly is an issue. I think that on a county perspective, the best we do is connect them, try our best to connect them with the resources they need. Sometimes those things happen through neighbors that understand maybe a situation the person's in. Otherwise, it may come through the sheriff's department. Maybe it's something going on in the public arena that they picked up on. And other times, I think it's simply citizen awareness, whether it's building and awareness taking place. So I think that the overall point of the answer to this is we do have resources around town to connect them to, and there's plenty of shelter available throughout the two cities in particular to try to help address these issues and then send them to the resources to build their lives to a better place.
Jenna?
I have to say, I disagree with one of the things my opponent has said. We do not have adequate housing and shelter to meet the needs of our growing homeless population. And that's something that we need to work at strengthening. And not only our actively homeless population, but there's a significant precariously housed population. We do have agencies like CAP, our Community Action Program, that goes out to meet folks where they're at, maybe they're living in their vehicle, to get them connected to services. The local center in town works with folks suffering from substance abuse disorder, meaning them where they're at to connect to homeless services too. And all of these agencies will tell you that there's a significant need for increased housing, and I will be advocating for that. Particularly with the homelessness prevention committee with the state. We can also address some of these needs with public safety, with our officers. Thank you.
All right, please people, we need questions. I'll tell you the truth, I'm about to ask ones that I just thought of myself. Okay? Start with Jenna this time. What priorities do you think the county commission should address during your term?
The biggest one is the mental health needs of our community. I'm working right now with both our Adult Local Advisory Council on Mental Health and our Children's Mental Health Local Advisory Council to identify where the gaps in services are, where those barriers are. Those groups are attended by both providers and consumers of those services, and then we're in turn working with our state legislators to put some bills together to address some of our local needs. On top of that, I'm also a member of the Association of Minnesota Counties Health and Human Services Policy Committee, where we advance statewide initiatives, and mental health is a #1 priority. There is a significant lack of beds for psychiatric care in Greater Minnesota, and there is nothing on the western half of the state. So it's imperative that we build out our infrastructure to meet the needs of our community members right here in our own community. Thank you.
Thank you, Paul.
Yes, to that note, I totally agree. Mental health is one of the greatest challenges, and also the ability to provide the housing necessary and the placement of it, maybe the better way to say it, of those individuals that are in that position. But to do that, we need a full workforce, and we are, as Clay County is one of the fastest growing counties in the nation, we support a lot of pressure with this continually, and so as a county, we need to be able to have a workforce that we can have enough people doing the caseloads and the assessments and the other things of value to help these people, and if we don't have the resources to do that, then we're in trouble. So it's a balance between need and having the ability to work for us to work with this population.
Thank you. Next question for you, Paul. What made you decide to run for county commission?
Thank you for the question. It's asked a lot. For me, it's timing. There, again, going back to all the years of experience I've had on the boards I've been on, mainly saltwater conservation in the county. Also, though, in my real estate career, I've always been active on local, and then as the last 6 years on Minnesota's Board Association Board of Directors, serving on government affairs. Those tenures for me are inspiring, and commissioner has been something I've thought of for years. I grew up around commissioners, known commissioners that I've worked with, and seen the work they've done. And being involved in county committees for the last 25 years has grown very close to me, and I'd like to continue to work with the county and bring through my leadership skills to the best level that we can attain to group and
Thank you. Jenna?
Yeah, so I decided to run a couple years ago when we were in the height of a pandemic, and we were looking at budget projections from the state that were kind of scary. And I was looking at the people that were walking into the public library and the services that I had been connecting them up to for years, and wondering what is going to happen if there are budget cuts. And I wanted to be a voice to advocate for those services that I knew that those people really needed. I also spent a significant portion of my career working in youth services, and I know an awful lot about the development of brains and what trauma does to our kids as they're growing up with those adverse childhood experiences. So I wanted to do what I could in an advocacy role to reduce some of those things so that we can have a healthy, thriving, safe community with every opportunity available that we can give to our families.
Thank you. Just one for you, Jen, and then I've got 2 questions that are pretty similar, so I'm going to ask them, and everybody you can answer one or 2 ways. What is your top 3 items, or what is your top goal? You can answer 3 or 1, whichever one, if you are elected to serve on the county commission.
So I was just talking about children. And I've been a part of our early childhood initiative in the county since its conception. And there's a lot of child care providers that are a part of that group. And we have just seen the need for childcare spaces explode. We're short well over 1,000 childcare spaces. And if we were to add a new family childcare every month for the foreseeable future, we would never make up that gap. So we need some changes in policy and incentives and business models. So that's some of the work that I'm doing. I've also mentioned public health, environmental, taking care of the natural resources that we have through things like the planning commission, making wise choices in what we build and where. Those are all areas that I care deeply about.
Thank you. Paul?
So I'll say for the, well, at the top, I think it's finding the right balance, overseeing these different departments. And certainly I think our biggest stressor is going to be mental health and all the associated issues that go along with that. But at the same time, we have to maintain many things throughout our economy, and that is along with public safety. That goes hand in hand, and the resource people we affiliate with to handle these citizens, no matter what the situation is. I believe also we are growing, and we need to be mindful of our business development and making sure that's growing so that we have people that continue to come in, we have the affordability through business growth, to provide jobs, and also revenues to help us with these county needs that are mandated for us through the state and all the settings. Thank you.
Thank you. Paul, let's start with you. Roads and infrastructure are aging. How will you help get those maintenance needs met?
In my opinion, I think Clay County is very mindful of this, and I think they do a good job, in my opinion. They're mindful of budgets. We are in a large inflationary time right now, more than normal. We're going to be pretty predictable where we're heading in the next 2 years. Fortunate side of it, the state government has a huge surplus. You see, who knows how they'll use that. But first of all, we have to have a legislature that's willing to pass the money bill. So we're working with these things. Other side, within more locally in the plan of Clay County, it's a 5-year-old plan that they have. We have inflation, they just revised that recently to the 6-year plan. So again, we fiscally responsible and not letting things degrade to deter where we're going. Do I have a little bit more time? Okay, fine.
Jenna?
Yes, I would agree with a lot of that. We do have a 5-year plan that is looked at regularly. Our funding for our roads and repairs that we need to do comes from a variety of different sources. And so we're very careful to balance the needs of different roadways, different maintenance costs with the money that we have available coming from these different sources. So it's a little bit of a shifting game now and then depending on what monetary sources are available, but there is actually I think it goes up maybe 15 years of repairs, replacements, and maintenance that we're planning to do, and things get moved up as there's funding and need. And of course, if something happens, we want to fix it right away too. There's a safety issue.
Thank you. Jenna, we'll start with this one for you. If somebody wants to basically grant you a wish, what is the one thing that if the budget was not a concern, you would do more of?
If the budget was not concerned, there would not be a single person in our county sleeping in a vehicle, wondering where they're going to sleep tomorrow night. We have a harsh environment here in Minnesota, and that housing stability is so critical for the well-being of our families. And so, yeah, I think that was my priority.
Paul?
My biggest wish would certainly be if the budget was where we want to be. It would certainly still focus toward housing for all. And whatever that looks like, it really it doesn't have a priority to me. I think it needs to be in every type of things, whether it's a roof on someone's head. But as part of that, work now through your life, it is part of the mental health sector, because it's within that and helping people, no matter what their situation is, and there's huge amounts of a variety of issues on that in this group. But having a large enough capacity to help all types of these needs and bring them with encouragement, compassion, and to build that for them to be able to make their own next steps, which will mean second chances, and some of us haven't even had the first ones to read out that.
Thank you. Next question, we start with Paul. Tell us your plans for encouraging business growth in the county.
Well, I think back to transportation, if I can say something on that also. Part of roads and bridges is having good roadways infrastructure in place so that we look appealing in our weather conditions and all other places that we have business growth. One of the things that was very, very active for well over 10 years was being part of the diversion. And I was very active on the original committee for the Chamber of Commerce Flood Protection Group. And I fought the opposition and was empathetic to them, but at the same time we need that protection. Now that that's coming in place, I think we can move forward with continued business growth on both sides of the rivers, hopefully complement each other, and we do that through many business groups, many initiatives we use for education, and I think the city operatives that also can help them.
Thank you. Jenna?
I think one of the things is having zoning that makes sense, and processes to get licensed that are not barriers to starting a business. And along with that comes taxes that are in line with the surrounding region, so that owning and operating a business on this side of the river is not gonna affect how much money you would make if you were 5 miles to the other side of the river. That should be as close as we can make it. I think we also can work with our economic development entities to promote our area and the things that we have going here. We have a fairly low cost of living, we have land available, and we have an educated, passionate workforce. So this is a really great place to start a business, and we need to spread that message across the region. So that's work that I'm involved in through the Greater Park Moorhead Economic Development Organization and West Central Initiative Economic Development.
Thank you. Jenna, can you tell us about the Main Street changes here in Moorhead and how the diversity on the county commission might have an impact on these changes?
The most direct impact, I think, would be I sit on the Moorhead Planning Commission. So as we look at zoning changes, approving different projects as they come through that board, that is me, an avenue to express your voice in that entity. I'm also involved, maybe on the periphery of some of the conversations that are taking place in planning what is going to go into those development areas. I think it's really exciting what can happen, some of the plans that are in place. I look forward to that growth and to, see what happens there.
Paul?
On a county level, I don't know, I think we can be advocates for the changes going on downtown, but those are city matters for the most part. I too was on the planning commission for full term, I think it was 6 to 9 years, I don't quite remember. And we didn't have anything with a new law at that time going on, so the other part, the part of the San County, and that's fiscal responsibility. Again, Jenny mentioned it. You know, I had want to build businesses in, and we want economic growth, whether it's downtown or in around the region. We have to be a piece of that. Is again, doing the best we can fiscally to keep our taxes as low as possible, but yet maintaining and servicing the essential services that we need to do.
All right, I'll start with this one, and if somebody's curious about what all the county commission is involved in other words, they refer to here as what pies the county commission had their fingers in. I think they're looking for an instruction about what all the county commission is connected with that affects the citizens. And Paul, that's what you go first.
Okay. I'll try my best on this one. There's a list of external agencies, and the external agencies that we work with throughout the area, maybe someone knows the exact count, but it looks here to be about 16 external agencies we give to, as well as other extra asks that will come from time to time to be specific. So for them, but over again, I view that we are the state, we have the state government and the county government, and in so many cases, I think it's about what we can do with the money that we have locally, a levy, and it's also that state advocating to our legislatures and working through them to fund funding wherever it's needed to the greatest good, and being advocates and being involved with our legislators to make the best for the Clay County area.
Thank you. Jenna?
So to clarify, the question was about citizen interaction with the county government and what the county government...
It literally says, can you tell us broadly what figurative pies the county commission has its fingers in?
Sure. So it is broad. It is a lot of pies. Some of the biggest line items in the county budget are social services, and that's going to cover things like child protective services, foster care, child care assistance. It's going to cover child care licensing. We also work with solid waste in our waste streams, the highway department. So lots of our roads, not all, some are owned by the city, some are township. Public health, engineering department deals with our planning and zoning. It's really, the county interacts with your life in lots of different ways, and some of them are quiet and some of them are loud, like, if you get involved with child protective services. But it's certainly vital throughout your lifetime. Veterans, we cover a variety of things. Mm-hmm.
Thank you. That concludes the question portion tonight, as we're getting close to our cutoff time. We'd like to thank both the candidates for participating tonight and for being candidates. Our democracy relies on people like you who are willing to become public servants. For the audience here and at home, if you'd like to learn more about your candidates, the League has partnered with the Forum Communications to present vote411.org, a voter's guide to help you learn about candidates in North Dakota, and there's an equivalent one for Minnesota side as well. So please keep checking with the local news outlets and with League Facebook page, and on using the voter's guide to inform, as well as simply talking to these candidates either after tonight, finding their email addresses. I'm sure they'd love to hear from you and address your concerns. Good luck to you both, and now we will do closing statements, and Jenny, you go first, and so Paul, you get the last word.
Well, thank you. I want to thank you again for being here and asking questions of us. I hope our dialogue was helpful, and I look forward to more discussion with you and others prior to the election on November 8th. If you would, please reach out anytime and contact me if you have any questions or just would like to visit. My website is paulforcommissioner.com. After the our discussion here. I have some cards my wife and I will be handing out in the back. Tells a little more about me. In closing, I want you to know that I'm ready to serve you. My long history of public service and experience is 3 common threads: commitment, engagement, and leadership. The timing is ideal for me. The current state board terms that I'm active in, that take me out of town a lot, are expiring, and I'm excited and fully committed to this position that would execute the duties required and beyond. With that, I say thank you.
Jenna.
My experience as your county commissioner and the relationships I have with leaders in our state and in the metro have a great value in advancing the priorities and needs of our county in a fiscally responsible manner. I'm a very driven, goal-oriented person, and I am excited about what's on the horizon for us. I look forward to continuing this work for you. I'm not going to make big promises about getting X, Y, and Z done because, as a former council member once said, county government, local government, government is a team sport. However, I can heartily promise to continue listening and learning and making decisions with compassion. I hope I have earned your vote of renewed support on this ballot and that you feel confident that I am the right person for this role. Together, let's build a strong, healthy community where all of our neighbors can thrive. You can find out more about me at jennakaley.com or on social media. I'm pretty easy to locate. Thank you.
Thank you again to everyone. Thank you to our league volunteers for tonight. We will take a few minutes now to get set up for the Moorhead Mayor Forum.
Thank you everyone for joining us and this candidate forum hosted by the League of Women Voters. My name is Bailey Stickney and I will be your moderator for this forum. This forum is being recorded by MCAM to be played back at a later time, and a recording will be posted to the League of Women Voters of the Red River Valley's Facebook page, probably our website, potentially other sources. The League of Women Voters, if you don't know who we are, is a nonpartisan political organization that encourages informed and active participation in government, works to increase understanding of major public policy issues, and influences public policy through education and advocacy. If you would like to learn more about the League, please visit our website or find us on Facebook. This is really important. The League of Women Voters sponsors candidate forums to provide the public with an opportunity to hear candidates discuss the issues that are important to members of the public. The League is a nonpartisan organization. We do not support or oppose any political party or candidate. The views expressed in each forum are those of the candidates, not those of the League of Women Voters. The League of Women Voters posts complete, unedited recordings of these forums. Editing is authorized only for official media reporting. Excerpts or edited clips of candidate forums may not be used for partisan political purposes. We want to thank Lake Agassiz Regional Library for providing this space tonight. It's very cozy. Before we begin, I'd like to review rules and procedures. We have a pile of questions here submitted in advance by the public on index cards for this event. Questions may have been screened for clarity or combined with similar questions. All candidates will be given an opportunity to address each question. If you think of a question and you have a note card, write it down, wave it in the air. One of our screeners will come grab it from you. This forum is our City Moorhead Mayoral Forum. We're going to go until right about 7:25. We have a timer right here in the front. She will indicate how much time is remaining. And when your time is done, when you hear that bell, go ahead and finish your thought. You don't have to stop talking immediately. We will give you 2 minutes for your opening remarks. Each question will be allowed 1 minute for response. And at the end of the question and answer period, we will have a 1 minute closing remarks time slot as well. With that, we'll begin with opening statements. And Mr. Shores, are you ready to begin with your opening statement?
Yes.
Okay, please take it.
Buju, Anin, Nese Indigenikaz, Anishinabwem, Minowa, Kevin Richard Shores, Indigenikaz, Jaganashi Moog, Makwa Nindunde, Minowa, Nindogichida, Aki Minowa, Gawa Babi Gani Kog, and Dunji Ba, Minowa, Moorhead, Minnesota, Nunguminde, Chi Migwich Gichimanadu, Gani Kana, Gani Kana, Gani Kana, Gani Kana, Ape Gish, Minobima Diziwe Rian, hello and hi. I am labeled at birth Kevin Richard Shores by the union of my parents. Although I consider myself as traditional as society will allow, I am Anishinaabe Inini, and I prefer to be labeled Nese in homage to my Anishinaabe heritage. The French called us Ojibwe, the English called us Chippewa. This land was a battle, a skirmish, a massacre point between my people and the Lakota, Dakota, Nakota people. That's why it is called the Red River Valley, because at one time the Anishinaabe people and the Buon people were murdering each other at the bequest of the dominant society. And the rivers flowed with blood, and the lakes flowed with blood, and then it got called the Red River Valley. And then Clay County came about, and then Moorhead came about, 1871. But this land was the Paleo-Americans. And I, as a traditionalist, am trying to utilize the sacred teachings of my ancestors to bring things back how they were. Because if we want to see how a society is rated by what they do to their most downtrodden, we have failed. And we are not going to fail anymore if I am the mayor of Moorhead. Miigwech.
Thank you so much for that introduction. And Ms. Carlson, please.
Thank you. First, I'd like to apologize for being late. I was at the Churches United fundraiser, Gourmet Soup Kitchen, and they had said that they were going to be done at 6:15, but there were so many people there that I had to keep dishing up soup, and I finally went and found former Mayor Mark Voxland to take my apron from me to continue dishing up soup so I could race over here. So I'm really glad that I didn't actually get a speeding ticket. So I apologize that I was late. My name is Shelly Carlson. I'm the current mayor of Moorhead. I ran for city council 4 years ago. I did not run for mayor, but Mayor Jonathan Judd was appointed to a judge, and on February 8th he resigned, and the council members unanimously appointed me to finish out the rest of Mayor Judd's term. So I simultaneously became the mayor and also the chair of the Fargo-Moorhead Diversion Authority on February 8th of last year, and have been working diligently on behalf of Moorhead ever since. I probably never would have ran for mayor prior, but now that I've been in the position, I have found that I really, really enjoy being an advocate for my community and being a representative at a variety of events, and also reaching out and building relationships across the river and across our community to really increase the quality of life that we have here in Moorhead. My three biggest priorities are really increasing our public safety and focusing on that, increasing our economic development in our community so that we can grow our business community, and then working on our infrastructure issues that we have in the city of Moorhead, such as 26 miles of a brick sewer system. which takes 1 mile a year that we do, so it will be done in 26 years, even longer than the or the 2021st underpass. So I'm running for another 4 years, and thank you for being here tonight, and thank you for the league for hosting. And again, I apologize for being late, but hopefully Moorhead is winning over at the Gourmet Soup Kitchen with soup from Rustica, parsnip maple. It's really good.
That sounds really good.
It is really good.
Thank you for joining us. And just 1 second. All right, our first question will go to Ms. Carlson. And really a softball for this first one. Can you please tell us what makes you most qualified to be the mayor of this city?
I think it's because I love my community. I mean, I think it's really simple. You have to really love the community that you live in to make everyone else want to live, work, and play in the community. And I've been here since 1990, so nearly 30 years. I have raised my children here. They are both Moorhead Spuds, and I married a Spud, so I feel like I should be an honorary Spud. Concordia made me an honorary Cobber, so I feel I could get anointed an honorary Spud. So I think that it's really that simple, that you know, I do love my community. I want to advocate to do everything that I can to make it even better.
Thank you. Nase, what makes you most qualified to be mayor of this city?
Well, the beautiful thing about a republic and a democracy is that it's not about me being the absolute best, because I can only imagine within a city with almost 45,000 people, there are people that are way more qualified than the two candidates before you. But because we two candidates were willing to put ourselves forward for this community, for the entities that reside within the city limits. So I am attempting, again, this is my 4th time rolling for mayor, because obviously I can't run. And so I'm going to do what I can do through the experiences I've had in my 55 years of surviving winter, and as an Anishinaabe, as a British entity, and also as a disabled 100% service-connected veteran. I have an oath to defend this system, and I shall continue that oath.
Thank you, and we always appreciate your humor. Our next question, what are some areas in Moorhead that you have at the top of your list for improvement? And this will start with Nase.
Either the decriminalization or the legalization of cannabis. I don't like to play the game of names, hemp and marijuana, because I look at marijuana as a derogatory term to an incredible plant. Cannabis, where there's over 100,000 byproducts that can be utilized by the cannabis cultivation. Most of my clothing that I wear is out of the cannabis plant. For over 30 years, I've been a cannabis activist because I've utilized cannabis to get off, because I'm a druggie. I'm addicted to heroin, and the VA is my dealer. And I used cannabis to get off of my OxyContins. And so we need this for the veterans, for the individuals suffering with addictions, where we can utilize this incredible plant first priority.
Thank you. Shelly?
Thank you. So areas in Moorhead for improvement. When I was door knocking, one of the things that individuals brought up to me continuously was, particularly in our downtown area, and trying to revitalize our downtown within the footprint of the Moorhead Center Mall. So that is definitely one area that I think needs significant improvement, and something that we are working on with Roy's development right now. And obviously there are other areas as well. It kind of would depend on where you live as far as what you might put as a priority. But there's different pockets of areas within the city that we have older roads, that we have red-rated facilities that are owned by the city. Unfortunately, the library is one of those entities that it needs improvement, which is part of the reason why we are hoping to get a yes vote on November for a sales tax for a new community center and library, which would be actually in the downtown area.
Thank you. Our next question, local hospitals are in Fargo. What can Moorhead do to ensure access for those who cannot easily cross the border? And we'll start with you, Shelly.
Thank you. That is definitely a challenge when we don't have a hospital. We don't have emergency areas or an emergency room in the state of Minnesota. It's one thing that we have had conversations with Ascension and Sanford about the possibility, but they have a budget also, and to be able to build 2 or 3 hospitals with when they already have one in a certain radius can be really challenging for them. So it's a matter of working with the state of North Dakota, develop those memorandums of understanding and figure out ways that individuals are able to cross the river. I have not heard specific stories that have been brought to my attention, although I'm sure that there are some. There are also opportunities, I think, to create clinics within the city of Moorhead that might be able to offer some of the healthcare needs or meet some of the healthcare needs of the residents, and so that has been also part of the conversation.
Thank you. Nace?
Can you repeat the question, please?
Absolutely. Local hospitals are in Fargo. What can Moorhead do to ensure access for those who cannot easily cross the border?
Because of my disability, I have what is called Persian Gulf War illness. And when I learned about this atrocity of experimental inoculations given to veterans and wreaking havoc on them, I immediately looked into what can I do to optimize my body, my health. And so utilizing different modalities of naturopathic and holistic and wisdom from my ancestors, for whatever reason, I am still alive, and all of these other veterans are dead. So health is pertinent prior to hospitalization, preventative measure. So how can we as a community thrive to increase the health of the community mentally, emotionally, spiritually, and absolutely physically? Priority.
Thank you. Our next question, we've had a lot of folks asking about the changes on Main Avenue. There are many folks that don't really know if that's permanent. A lot of people felt like it was just kind of suddenly there. We've had so many questions about this. Can you tell us what the plans are for Main Avenue? And go ahead, Nace.
Well, unfortunately, for the last 15 years, I've seen nothing but darkness here in Moorhead, metaphorically. But as I hear the people telling me about the development, lack of development, the development, lack of development that continues to occur in our city, the question has been the same when I moved up here in 1999. Where is downtown? Where is Main Avenue? And if you look at historically what Main Avenue looked like, it was full of bars and drinking establishments because of North Dakota being a dry state. So the community, of course, we are here as servants to the community. So what the community wants should be the priority. What we can establish and develop together helps all of us. When the tide comes in, all ships rise.
Thank you. Would you like me to repeat the question? Okay.
That's actually a question that we've been getting a lot too. as mayor, city council. The Main Avenue project right now is a trial run being conducted by the Minnesota DOT. It's part of a larger project to look at how we might be able to slow down traffic coming through our community. So it will be like that until I believe the end of October, or until we get a significant snowfall, which we all know could be the first part of October too, so we're doing pretty good that we haven't had that yet. So they're going to be looking at it and examining it to see if that's something that could be a long-term solution, or if it would go back to the 4 lanes that it was prior.
Thank you. We have another road question. It can be dangerous to ride your bicycle in this city and even on county roads. With fuel prices and inflation and overall rising prices, people may be feeling like they want to take their bicycles and also want to feel safe. What are your thoughts on bicycle safety? Go ahead, Shelly.
Yeah, thank you. That is one issue that has been brought up several different times, and we have actually several council members that ride their bikes to and from a lot of our meetings. Some even ride in the wintertime, which is surprising to me because I barely want to even go outside in the wintertime. So a lot of it has to do with how our roads are constructed and ensuring that new roads that we create have the bike lanes in them that create safety for individuals who are biking, walking, maybe rollerblading. So it has to do with being forward-thinking, and as we're creating new roads, that we're building that in.
Thank you. Naysay?
The roads in Moorhead are appalling. For somebody that can't even see the roads, but am very sensitive to the structural integrity of my vehicle, I feel it going through the city on how horrible the potholes were, which I thought would help me in the mayoral, being a cannabis supporter. A lot of potholes. But the challenge with bike riding in Moorhead, because we have people that are so caught up in their mobile devices that they're not paying attention to bike riders. And then we have these horrific cities where people are weaving from potholes, and it's just a moment of when someone on a bicycle can meet their demise. And I'm going through this with my daughter, who's riding her bike to the senior high and having to cross that new overpass, underpass, construction, heavy traffic area. And I'm fearful every day.
Thank you. Again, we appreciate your humor. Our next question, how will you foster strategic relationships with other leaders? We all know that government, it's hard to get things done if you don't have good relationships with other folks that are doing work in this community. So how will you make those things happen? Naysay.
Well, first and foremost, I would like to deny any financial gain as mayor. That if I have any kind of salary, I would like to utilize it to start a program to where somebody could be paid to be with me each day as mayor, so we can help establish that relationships. And I am naysay. So if you're doing a good job, if you are creating positivity or minimally neutralizing negativity, then you are being successful. And as long as you're putting out minimally 70%, I like 77, but if you're minimally putting out 77, then I'm supporting you. If you're not, I'm going to say something, because government needs to be held accountable, and I'll be watching them.
Thank you. Shelly?
Thank you. I think being in an elected position, we're not an island. We can't silo ourselves from working with other elected officials. We live in a community where we have so many different entities within the city, within county, and with the state, and even with our federal delegates, that we all have to reach out and really establish those relationships. So a lot of it is just sitting and having conversations and working together and making sure that even if we might not have maybe the same path, oftentimes we have the same goal, but it's maybe different ways on how we might reach that goal. And it's working through those things together and collaborating, which we do, I think, a very, very good job within the city of Moorhead. And there's a lot of joint powers agreements and different types of memorandums of understanding that really show the collaboration that occurs.
Thank you. Our next question, what are your thoughts on the abortion clinic moving into Moorhead? Go ahead, Shelly.
With the abortion clinic, number one, that's not a city issue, and if they met the zoning requirements, and so they were legally allowed to move here.
Thank you. Naysay?
My ancestors utilized herbs and what was called tinctures that would cause a pregnancy to stop. They knew that there are certain circumstances where it is not in the best interest for another miraculous perfection of unique individual to come forth through the womb of our mother. And this is between each individual and the choices that they have to go through and face their own deity or themselves every day with such decisions. So I support the right to choose for every individual to do to their own body by their choice. And that also means to have the choice not to be injected by a mandated vaccine.
Thank you.
Your own domicile.
Thank you. I'm sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off.
I do that pause because, when you, sorry, dramatic pause, they call it.
That's all right, and I apologize.
Oh, no worries, thank you.
We have a couple of questions about business and economic development. One thing that's popping up here is general overall economic development of the city, but in particular, folks are concerned that it's really tough to be able to afford land and a building. So a lot of times businesses have to rent from some sort of landholder, property holder, and that has a tough pressure on businesses. Can you tell us some of your thoughts about that arena? Go ahead, Kevin. I'm sorry, Naysay.
Have lost Bell. I jump at Kevin too. If there's land, if there's housing, if there's an empty building, there's an opportunity for cannabis to be grown. Over 100,000 byproducts can be utilized from the cultivation of the cannabis plant. There's plenty of farmland around Moorhead to be grown upon. If you look around us, everything around us except metal and glass can be replaced by the cannabis plant. It's not just for smoking anymore. And so with all of the opportunities that are there that could be established for economic development and growth through the cultivation of cannabis, I would be totally open door policy to have as many joint meetings as needed to find better business growth in Moorhead.
Thank you. Shelly.
Yeah, so that is a challenge for smaller businesses with land and buildings being expensive. One of the things that we want to do with the new community center and library is create an entrepreneurship center where we would be able to work with those businesses to try to locate solutions to affording land or a building. There's different programs that the state has. There's different programs that there's one that will be coming out, but I don't know that I'm allowed to announce it yet, from Gate City Bank that will help certain types of businesses assist in even expanding their businesses. That one it's a challenging one, and that kind of goes back to that collaboration that is really needed between the city and nonprofit organizations and state officials, and trying to figure out how to address that issue.
Thank you. All right, we need to wrap up our question and answer period here, and we will move to closing statements. And Shelly, it is your turn to give your closing statement.
All right, thank you so much. I have only been in elected office for 4 years, and so I'm not going to have all the answers to all the questions, and I don't know that even for somebody, I see Representative Marquardt in the audience, as long as he has served, I know that different issues pop up, and then we always have to try to find solutions. And so that is one thing I am committed to doing, is building relationships with other entities and working towards solutions, because you never quite know what is going to pop up and what you're going to have to overcome. So it's a constant learning, which I am willing to do that for the city of Moorhead.
Thank you. Naysay.
Naysay, Kevin Richard Shores. Yesterday we were at the Home Builders Association in Fargo, and since I left there, from leaving there, my chair broke down. I'm in a brand new wheelchair. For the last 24 hours, I was stationary in the same position, thinking and pondering about our future, because we're all in it together. We think local, act local, and think global. So what can we do for the community? Also, as I'm sitting here thinking, if I'm saying I don't want my salary, if I became mayor, then I would offer my salary for Shelly Carlson's expertise and create a lieutenant mayor, because she could be my eyes, as well as all of you, because I am here as a servant to the people, to the community, and through the community is what I think we need, is the unity. So what the people, the entities want of me, that's my goal and my intentions. I rode my wheelchair 270 miles to the state capitol for my brother and sister veterans. I'm willing to do the same for Moorhead. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Thank you to our candidates participating, for audience here and at home. If you'd like to continue learning more about your candidates, the League has partnered with Forum Communications to present 411.org. It's a voter's guide to help you learn more about North Dakota and Minnesota candidates' positions on important issues. And stay tuned, we do have one more forum coming up here in a couple minutes. Thank you.
Hello, everyone. Welcome. Good evening. Welcome to the District 4 Minnesota Senate and Minnesota House 4A, 4B Candidates Forum. My name is Ashley Ladberry-Herchena. I'm the co-president of the League of Women Voters of the Red River Valley, and I'll be your moderator for this forum. The forum is being recorded by MCAM, our friends in the back, and it's going to be played back at a later time, and the recording will also be posted to the League of Women Voters Facebook page and also our website as well. So just kind of set up for the ground rules tonight. So the League of Women Voters is a nonpartisan political organization, and we encourage informed and active participation in government and work to increase understanding of major public policy issues and influence public policy through education and advocacy. If you'd like to learn more about the League, you can visit our website or find us on Facebook. So we do have a statement that we read kind of related to the recording of the forms before we get started. So the League of Women Voters sponsors candidate forums to provide the public with an opportunity to hear candidates discuss the issues that are important to members of the public. The League is a nonpartisan organization that does not support or oppose any political party or candidate. The views expressed in each of these forums are those of the candidates and not of the League of Women Voters. The League of Women Voters posts complete, unedited recordings of the forums. Editing is authorized only for official media reporting. Excerpts or clips or edited clips of candidate forums may not be used for partisan political purposes. We do want to thank the Lake Agassiz Regional Library for providing our space tonight. So before we begin, just to go through a couple of rules. I believe our lovely, helpful volunteers have been passing out. There we go. Barb has some extra cards. So we are collecting cards tonight on we're collecting questions on index cards. So if you would like to submit a question, just raise your hand, and Barb or Bailey or other volunteers will drop those off for you. Once you've completed your question, you can just hold up your completed question, and one of them will come grab it and bring it up to me. So with questions, they may be screened for clarity and will very likely be combined with other similar questions. If you saw the mayor's race earlier, you kind of saw that happening where we had multiple questions on one issue, so we kind of combined them together to give an opportunity for many different questions to come forward tonight. All candidates will be given the opportunity to address each question, and we'll go in a rotating order. So John, we'll have you start with your opening statement, and then Heather, you will answer the first question, and then Rob, you'll get to answer the second question first, and then we just kind of loop around in order. So all candidates that were on the ballot were invited to attend tonight. Candidates that did not attend were invited to submit a statement, and we do have one statement to read. We also had a situation tonight where we have a candidate running a write-in campaign, and the rules from the League of Women Voters of Minnesota do not allow someone who lost in the primary running a write-in campaign to participate in the forum as a candidate answering questions. However, our effort to help kind of provide people some opportunity to hear from all the candidates that are running campaigns this year was that candidate did submit a written statement. So before we get started with the opening statements from the candidates today, we'll read the two statements that were submitted. So first, we have Lynn Helmrast. So I'm going to read Lynn Helmrast's statement. So I am Lynn Helmrast and running for Minnesota State House of Representatives here in here in Moorhead. I am a longtime resident of Moorhead and crew member of the Yum-Comp's Viking ship. I worked with Moorhead Public Schools as a school psychologist and educator for 33 years. I also served as president of Education Moorhead, our local teachers union. I'm a licensed psychologist and have my own private practice since 1981. I'm running to make a difference in Minnesota's future and be a strong voice for Moorhead and St. Paul. I have seen what's been happening in Moorhead and across Minnesota. Our high cost of living and high inflation are crushing our families and businesses. We have seen more overdoses, suicides, and mental health crises than at any other point in our history, and our crime rate in Minnesota has spiked alongside it, creating one of the most dangerous and violent times in our great state's history. I've spent my career as a leader and a compassionate problem solver, and I'm ready to serve the people of Moorhead. My priorities for my first legislative session include making Moorhead competitive. I will advocate for policies that create an even playing field to help our businesses grow and compete effectively with our neighbors across the river. Supporting law enforcement to undo the horrific efforts to defund our Moorhead police and fund our mental health system, prosecute criminals, and secure our communities. Education. If elected, I would work towards strengthening educational standards, adding mental health resources, and supporting our students in crisis. And finally, mental health. Support mental health in our youth and adults through promoting substance use prevention efforts and mental health crisis intervention services in our schools and in our communities. When elected, I will listen to you. I will take your calls, your emails, and personally show up for your community, for our community. Elected officials need to hear from you, and I can't wait to. I'm Lim Helmrast. I'm an educator, a union leader, and I'm running for Minnesota State House. Thank you for being here today. I hope to earn your vote. So that was our statement from Lynn Helmrast. So also our write-in candidate, Edwin Hahn, also submitted a written statement as well. So I will read that as well. Do you want to elect a party puppet or a true statesman who will stand for freedom and your constitutional rights, no matter the cost? My name is Edwin Hahn. I'm your write-in candidate for state senator. My name will not appear on the ballot, so you must write in Edwin. I'm here to teach you how to guard and keep your freedom. Less than 9 months ago, the Republican and DFL officials stood by as an evil agenda tried to harm us, remove our right to work, and deny us our bodily autonomy. The same party officials have handpicked the 2 Senate candidates that will appear on the ballot, and the fruit does not fall far from the tree. Where were the candidates during the COVID crisis? Were they on the front line speaking up and courageously defending our rights? If they did not have the courage to stand against evil attacking their own family, what makes you think they have the strength to stand for you in the den of vipers in St. Paul? On February 1st, 2022, 100 plus patriots gathered under my leadership for the Clay County Republican Caucus, where we declared our God-given rights and responsibility to preserve them. United in Christ-like courage, we are strong. Divided by gossip, lies, and social pressure, we are weak. Let us unite courageously for freedom. And then in quotations, it is for freedom that Christ has set us free. Stand firm then, and do not be burdened again by the yoke of slavery. On quotation. Apparently, my peaceful presence is so influential that corrupt establishment operatives barred 10 duly elected delegates and myself from voting on May 7th, 2022, in quotations, Republican endorsing convention, on quotation, in Hawley. One of the candidates, Dan Boehner, watched while your right to vote was molested. Other key issues I'm prioritizing: make Minnesota a Second Amendment stronghold that shall not be infringed, the right to life, traditional family values, parental authority over their children, smaller government, less tax, and power to the people. No other Senate District 4 candidate has boldly stood for your financial freedom, health freedom, parental rights, and election integrity. Regardless of the establishment's fake values, we the people must stand for what is true, just, honorable, and worthy of praise. I need you to show up on November 8th and send a message to the elites. We will not bow down and worship at your bully pulpit. Write in Edwin Hahn. And then for more information, visit wewinwithedwin.com. And Edwin is in person tonight as well, if you would like to speak with him in person. All right, so we want to thank the candidates for submitting their written statements so that the people of Moorhead can hear from all of the candidates that are running campaigns this year. So we will start with our 2-minute opening remarks. So John, if you want to start and introduce yourself.
Thank you. So my name is John Hest. I'm a candidate for Minnesota House District 4B. I'm a farm-grown educator, dad, union member, and proud resident of rural Clay County. I grew up as the 5th generation of my family's farm near Pearlie in Norman County. My dad and brother continue to farm today. I'm passionate about family farming and have been active in the Minnesota Farmers Union, including graduating from their new leader academy, which involved lobbying in Washington and St. Paul on behalf of farmers. I work as an academic advisor at M-State here in Moorhead and teach classes in history and government as well. I'm a proud member of my union, MAPE Local 1502, and serve as a steward and in our college's college-wide meet and confer team. Most importantly, I'm a dad to a 2.5-year-old Eleanor and a husband to Natalie. We live in Glendon. If elected, my top priorities would be fighting for family farmers and bolstering our public schools from pre-K all the way through university. So if we want family farming to exist in any meaningful way in the future, we need immediate action to ensure its continued viability. I support expanding the beginning farmer tax credits, as well as incentivizing retiring farmers to sell or rent to own farmland to beginning farmers. In regards to public education, I support fully funding our public schools, again, all the way from pre-K through to university. This would help with our property tax issue, as well as ensuring that our kids are getting the best possible education. Representative Marquardt leaves some really big shoes to fill, and I would believe that I can ably serve and fill those shoes, fulfilling that legacy of accessibility to my constituents, deal-making over grandstanding, serving the folks of District 4B rather than any kind of party interests. So again, thank you, and I hope to earn your support.
Thank you. Heather.
Hello, Heather Keeler, running for my second term of District 4A. It's nice to see all of you here. Last time we did this, we were in the middle of a pandemic. And so it is nice to be in community and engage in these capacities. So thank you for hosting this. I moved to Moorhead, like many of us, because of education opportunities. I say I'm a double dragon. I graduated with my bachelor's in project management, my master's in educational leadership, and I worked as an Indian education liaison in the school district. Before that, I was actually a substitute coordinator. So when we talk about like the issues in the school, more than just the teachers, just getting our substitutes in the door, but also being creative in our areas of art and music. I think we're really cutting those, and those are outlets for creativity for our kids. It's also ways that they can maneuver around in that setting that's not just sitting and which is making wiggles for a lot of our little kids and making it hard to learn. So I'm a huge advocate for education, higher education, protecting Mother Earth, but also making sure that we're a voice and we're a powerful voice when it comes to Minnesota. I keep saying I've been a voice for the underserved community my entire life, and I think that Moorhead is extremely underserved and underheard when it comes to the state and their decision making. We're a border city. If many of you know, we were the fastest growing city outside of Minneapolis, St. Paul in the last 10 years, and I think that we deserve to have a voice, and so I just will continue to be a liaison as I'm at the doors. My main goal is to listen to your issues because it's not all about me and what I believe. It's really about what this community believes, and I just hope to uplift the things that are important to you. Before my time is up, I also want to say thank you to Representative Marquardt, who I see here, who was a great mentor to me in my first term and actually served this community very, very well and has set a foundation for us to be powerful moving forward. So thank you for that, and thank you all for being here.
Thank you. Rob.
Well, thank you. I want to thank, first of all, the League of Women Voters for putting this on. I think vibrant discussion is the key to our democracy, and so I really appreciate the work that they do. So I'm Rob Kupek. I have been a television meteorologist here for the last 20 years. So I will try to answer the question that I get the most at the door is, why are you doing this, would be the number one. And so it may not seem intuitive, but there is actually some connection, I think, between meteorology and politics. When I was in college and studying meteorology, we would all put our forecasts together, and then that would be averaged out. And we actually had a contest to see who would be the best meteorologist, best forecaster. But we didn't play really against each other. What we played against was consensus. That consensus forecast, when you pooled all the meteorologists together and had that forecast, that was always the best forecast. And very few people ever beat consensus. And I think that we could do a lot more in politics if we come together with consensus. So one of the reasons that I am running is I think I have pretty good skills at trying to get people together and listening. I think a big part of being a representative is when something comes before the legislature is to ask those parties that this will impact what they think of that. And so that will be my number one goal as a state senator, is to do that, to make sure if it's something that's impacting our schools, something that's impacting our police, is to come back and ask that question. So one other, just a little bit more about me too. I've been here in Moorhead for 22 years. We moved out here for my wife's job, and we always said we wouldn't move any further west than Minnesota, so by 9 blocks. We held true to that. But we had a choice at the time, and it was between here and actually we were looking at another town in New Jersey, and we came out to Moorhead, and we absolutely fell in love with this town. And even though that would have kept us closer to family, this is where we decided we would raise our family.
All right, thank you. So Heather, you'll start with the first question. So we had two similar questions related to compromise and working together. So first of all, talking about almost like yes or no, are you willing to compromise and work across the aisle to get things done? And then asking, how will you do this? How will you cultivate relationships with other legislators?
So the thing I've said from the very beginning is that there's slivers of commonality. We'll disagree on a whole lot of things, but when it comes down to the needs of our community, we have to find slivers of commonality, and I believe that I did that. You know, I'm stood on the House floor and had Representative O'Neill from the other side last year say that I was a gem to Moorhead, because I do that. I actively sit. I went out to dinner with people across the aisle. If you see, we live in an area that there are a lot of Republicans, and I do believe that it's my job to represent all of us. And I tried to learn. It's a lifelong opportunity to learn other viewpoints, and so really trying to go into spaces that we may not agree in a certain area, but slivers of commonality in other areas are really important. And some of the best legislation that we come up with is when we challenge each other to grow and to think outside the box. It's interesting to me that we kind of just stay in our hard shell rather than being open-minded and learning and really listening and growing. And I think we do that when we challenge each other across the aisle. So I absolutely plan to continue to do that.
Thank you. Rob?
Okay. Well, that kind of goes off of the opening theme there. I think we have two excellent examples of how to do that, as Heather mentioned. Paul Marquardt, who is here in the room, also an excellent example of getting together and working across the aisle and getting things done. A tremendous budget bill that was passed this past session that unfortunately did not make it through the Senate. And I think Senator Ken Eakin, the current state senator, who's been a really good mentor towards me, is a great example of how to work together and get things done. You know, Ken was on the Agriculture Committee, and that's one of the committees that, for the most part, always get something done and passed through. That bill got passed through this year, so a good place where you can find some compromise. So yeah, I think it is all about finding compromise, finding ways to work together, and I think we need more of that. It's lacking, again, in a lot of our society in a lot of ways, so we need to get back to that.
Thank you. And John?
Yeah, so as Rob said, we have two of about the best leaders in the state on this issue, I think, who are retiring here, Paul and Kent. What our district needs, what our state needs more of, is folks who are willing to get things done to help people in our district without regards to ideology, without regards to party lines, without regards to what party leadership is telling them, just to focus on building consensus, on passing legislation that's going to actively help people. There was an awful lot of that at the legislature this year that unfortunately got lost in a quagmire of partisanship. So I absolutely fully plan to work across the aisle with folks of all stripes to get things done to help the folks in District 4B. That's my pledge.
So our next question will begin with Rob. So again, kind of combining two somewhat similar questions. What does District 4 need most from the state government in the next session? And how do you see yourself as being the best person to be able to help fulfill that?
Sure. Well, one of the things that we're very lucky right now is Clay County, and Becker is growing as well, but Clay County is the fastest growing county outside of the Twin Cities metro. And so that's good, but with that growth will come challenges. And I think that's where the state can definitely be a partner to help meet those needs. We have a tremendous worker shortage. We've had one here in the Fargo-Moorhead area for a long time, and we need to find ways to address that. We also have a shortage of workforce housing, and particularly there's some programs for lower income housing. There's houses being built for higher income, but we're missing maybe that gap in the middle where workers who we're going to need to come here as the jobs will continue to grow to find that gap that we can fill. And I think that's someplace where the state can help out. State can also help out with infrastructure in terms of our growing population, and schools too. Our schools are getting, the funding is dropping off, and we need to make sure we're properly funding our education system.
Thank you. John?
Yeah, so what I see as the biggest need is money back in folks' pockets, support for folks who are just struggling to get by. A big way that I think we could do that is by passing a similar version of the tax bill that was on the table last year, as by passing those, that tax cut on Social Security income, by providing tax credits for child care, for student loan payments, for folks that need a little more help, providing that help. is absolutely what I see as the biggest need. As far as how I could best fulfill that need, it kind of connects back to the last question, I think. I very much I've been told that I have a down-to-earth personality, so I think that could play well into that pragmatic deal-making thing, getting stuff done, like actively getting stuff done without regard to partisanship, to ideology that's going to come back to bite us in the end.
We need bonding. We have $17.5 million of an ask to finish our flood mitigation plan. We're kind of the player that hasn't come to the table yet for that. We know that brings jobs, and we know that also creates an economic influx, because right now there's a lot of businesses who are worried about development in an area that has high flood concern. And so there's that. But also one of the other elements of bonding is that on the top of the Minnesota State University's request list, Weld Hall is top on their list. And as many of you have either gone to MSUM, teach at MSUM, or have participated in that space, we really need to make those elements ADA accessible for our entire community. But then also Dilworth Fire Station is one of the things that's on the bonding area. And so to me, adding what they have already said, I would say we need to go back to work and make sure we put that bonding money to work, because again, I say, well, there's a lot of things that we want to invest in here that make us livable and fun and thriving. If you hear some of the other community bonding requests, they're a little bit funner than maybe flood mitigation, but we need to commit to that, because the costs are only going to continue to go up, and when we nickel and dime that, it just extends the cost, it prolongs the activity, and we need to get that project done and move on to other things.
Thank you. So John, the next question will begin with you. What can the state of Minnesota do, and you as legislators, to help people access health care that is so far out of reach for so many Minnesotans?
That is a great question. I think there are several different things that the state could do to help bridge this gap. So the first thing, I work at a community and technical college. I'm a big believer in our community and technical colleges as drivers for workforce, economic development, and workers for the healthcare sector. I work with nursing students every day, and I see we got, the last time around, I think we got 80 applicants for 10 seats in our nursing program. People want to get into these high-need professions, and we need to invest in them so that there's actually seats, so that they can actually join these professions and go to work in our rural communities. The other piece that I always talk about is an affordable public option for health insurance, a buy-in to Minnesota Care. We need farmers, self-employed folks, anybody who doesn't have access to employer-provided health insurance needs an affordable quality plan that's going to cover the care they need, so they're not getting blanketed with medical debt. That would be the other thing I would say.
Thank you. Heather?
I would say that. I would also add we need to look at things like paid family and medical leave. We also looked at sick and safe time. If you guys are familiar with what sick and safe time was, it would allow individuals who maybe work part-time jobs, like people who are working at cashiers or at gas stations, if they come across any sort of domestic violence or assault and they need some safe time to go for mental health supports, they would have access to that. But also I think we need to reframe what access to health care looks like. I think that it has to be holistic. We have to serve our community with their mental health, their spiritual, physical, and mental. When we don't do that collectively, we're kind of missing all the gaps when it comes to access to health care, and so reducing those silos in that work, but also making sure that we have packages for employers so that when employees need to leave, whether their kids are sick from school or they need to go take them to doctors, that they're still eligible to be workers in this community, and it's not always falling on the backs of our employers as well, that we have those type of programs in place that are actively working for both our employers and our employees.
Rob?
Sure. I'll tell you a little story. I was out at a farmstead out to the east of Rolog, and I was out just going farmstead to farmstead, door knocking, talking to people, and I came across wife of a farmer, and she had a job, and she had her job gave them the health insurance, and she was really unhappy with her job, and she was just, I'm tied down to this job though because it's how I have to get insurance. And she talked to me about how if she could get open, as John was saying, more people into Minnesota insurance, if her husband as a farmer, as a small businessman, could buy into that, that would free them up to do what she wanted to do and also give them that security they need. So we need to find ways to make sure that we can make health plans portable so people aren't tied down and give them the freedom that they want to access that health care and have the jobs that they want to have. And we can also work on some ways to lower costs, particularly in the prescription drug area.
Thank you. Heather, this next question will begin with you. What should the legislature do to keep higher education, specifically public universities and colleges, affordable for all students?
That's a really great question. One of the things that I was able to do was I served on the higher education committee both terms, and then I was actually placed on the conference committee, which, if you know, that means that 5 members out of the House, 5 members out of the Senate end up on that conference committee and make the final decisions that actually go out the door. So being a freshman and being able to accomplish that was really big. And so I think my answer to that is to continue to advocate to be at those tables, because higher education, I say, is the foundation of our economics here. People move here because of education. We have MSUM, we have a technical school, and we have a private school. We're one of the most unique districts in that capacity. And so I am a dragon. I saw this system from the inside. I have a kid who's going into school. I did college and career readiness, and I worked in admissions. And so I understand higher education. And so I would just continue to advocate to be at those tables and continue. I don't just listen to administrators and what they want. I don't just listen to faculty, what they want. I don't just listen to the students. I listen to everybody and lift up those voices in higher education.
Thank you. Rob?
Yeah, as Heather was saying, obviously higher education is really important to Moorhead with the colleges that we have here. And we're seeing declining enrollment at both Concordia and at MSUM. And some of it is that I worry that those schools are pricing students out. Particularly MSUM has been a great place for those first-generation college students to come, and we've seen that enrollment decline. And it's interesting. It's a thing across the country where a lot of the flagship universities, places like the University of Minnesota, had their largest freshman enrollment last year than they had since the 60s. So some places are seeing that enrollment coming up. And what I'm worried about is that there are schools where the students feel like that price tag has just now gotten too high for that, and they're not going to places like MSU. If we're going to invest all that money, maybe they're looking more towards the U. We need to make sure, particularly those colleges that serve those first-generation college students, that they're still a gateway to get into college.
Thank you. John?
Yeah, so I would echo both what Heather and Rob said about the importance of public higher education. So I'm a proud grad of 2 public universities. I'm a proud, I've worked in public universities. I work at a public college now, so I firsthand know the importance of this. When I sit on, so as part of my meet and confer duties, so meet and confer is where you bring forward, as part of a union, you bring forward your members' concerns to administration. As part of that, I got to hear about the requests that our college made for the bonding bill, and it was a pretty sad list. I'm going to be honest with you. It was Band-Aid fixes for HVAC. It was fixing stuff that's been breaking down for 60 years. It was not anything new, exciting, investing in the future. It was sticking a Band-Aid on an HVAC system, stuff like that. So we need new investments if we want to keep these students. We're seeing these declining enrollments, and that's partially due to the cost of college. We need, investments in the affordability for college and student loan programs for high-need areas. We need to do everything we can to keep these students, to get these students educated and out into the workforce.
Okay, thank you. So Rob, the next question will begin with you. With the potential $12 billion surplus in hand, how do you think that money should be allocated?
I think that the budget bill that was on the table last year would be a really good start to doing that. That was a great budget bill. It had money for schools. It had money for tax relief. It got rid of the Social Security, the income tax on Social Security, and it also had money for infrastructure needs, and it also had money for public safety. There was $765,000 for the Moorhead Police Department in that bill. Moorhead Police Department is down about 6 officers. That would have gone a long way to helping them have retention and increase those salaries to keep those officers here. It had money for the Dilworth Fire Department, which Heather mentioned, which they desperately need a new fire department, and also had money for Clay County. Our radio systems for the police department haven't been updated since the 90s. Think about how technology has changed since the mid-90s, and we really need some money to update that equipment. And this money in that budget bill and that surplus would have gone a long way to help that.
Thank you. John?
Yeah, my priorities are very similar to what Rob just talked about. You know, I think the two big things I've talked about some of the tax relief that I think we could provide for folks who need it, cutting that Social Security income tax, child care tax credit, student loan tax credit, all that stuff, and then the other big bucket would be education. That's where I would put my focus is getting that tax bill through, getting our schools fully funded so that we can ensure that we're not facing our rural districts and these property tax hikes. It's unsustainable, and it's frankly a failure on the part of the state to live up to its obligation to fully fund our public schools. So those would be the two big areas where I'd be focusing my attention when we're talking about the gigantic surplus that we have sitting in St. Paul.
Thank you. Heather.
All of that. Funding education, there is a requirement that the state is supposed to offset 2/3 of the cost for higher education, and that is looking more like 1/3 now, which what ends up happening is it ends up falling on the back of the students in the cost of tuition, and we know that that is becoming harder and harder to come out of pockets, that fully funding our schools. When I think of that, I have a first grader who sits in a classroom with 26 other students and no aid, but also that would allow us to support staff in our schools. But also one thing that we haven't mentioned is investing in a just transition with sustainability to protect Mother Earth and the environment. A lot of the transitions that we need to make are really cost heavy up front, that with the money that we have, we could maybe make some of those investments that would actually sustain us long haul for a couple things. And then housing, making sure that we look at the deeply affordable housing, not just apartments that have dog, spas in the basement that are running $1,100. Like, that's not feasible for a lot of us in this community. And I think too with the just transition, thanks.
All right, thank you. Okay, so John, the next question will begin with you. And we had a couple people asking questions related to specifically women's access to health care. So I'm going to actually read the question that I think is phrased maybe most neutrally. Should the state of Minnesota have a law protecting access to abortion or continue to rely on the Minnesota Supreme Court ruling?
Yes to the first half of the question. Yeah, the state absolutely should have a book on a law on the books protecting a woman's access to health care. It's a decision that a woman needs to make with her doctor. It's not something the state needs to be in the room for. We should have that law on the books.
And Heather?
Yeah, I think that it's not our place as legislators to be in medical rooms. We don't do that for other medical decisions. But also, I support the move of the clinic moving over here. I've helped bring some of our federal and state leaders in here to understand what independent clinics do, because what I can tell you, working with the populations that I've worked with, abortions aren't going to stop. Providing healthy access to abortions is how we keep our communities safe. I've seen a lot of bad outcomes from hanger abortions or other self-inflicted abortions that actually create long-term costs to our emergency rooms, which a lot of people want to try to reduce anyways. And so I think absolutely, one, it's not our job as legislators to be in your business when it comes to your decision with your doctor, but also making sure that we are a community that supports the services that we provide here in this community.
Thank you. Rob?
And I will go with the yes, I fully support reproductive freedom for women. We know the ways that we can reduce the number of abortions. We know that having access to child care is one of those things. Financial barriers to having children is one of the reasons that women do not carry through with a pregnancy. We also know that having prenatal care, family planning, and access to contraception are all things that can greatly reduce the number of abortions. So I think while we keep reproductive freedom there, I think there are things that we can all work on to do that. And it is not the place of government to step in and make it interfere with it. What is a very difficult decision between a woman and her doctor. So absolutely support reproductive freedom.
Thank you, Heather. The next question will begin with you. Homelessness is an ever-increasing hurdle for our citizens. What can the state and you as legislators do to help?
I love this question again. I had the opportunity to serve as the vice chair of preventing homelessness, which was actually a new division that the House created. A really nice part of that is we partnered. The chair is from Southside Minneapolis, and so one of the things that we did was brought light to the fact that Clay County is actually the highest in Native American women being homeless outside of leaving incarceration, and second for Black men leaving incarceration. Those are our county numbers. And so highlighting the fact that homelessness is just not a Minneapolis-St. Paul issue, but it very much is a greater Minnesota issue, and we don't have the resources here to support that. And so we did put some money in our funding at the first part of the term that went out to counties to address preventing homelessness. But preventing homelessness is keeping people in their homes, and a big part of that is keeping our elders in their homes. When I go out and talk to a lot of our elders in the community, a lot of these increasing costs in our homes are forcing them to move into assisted living, which is actually way more expensive. And so it's just this cycle that goes round and round. And so sustainable living, focusing on deeply affordable housing and being a voice that we're still massively in need of support out here.
Thank you. Rob.
I think in addition to making sure that we have housing for people, a lot of what we need to do, though, are those supportive services that go along with that. So it's one thing if we can get people into a shelter, but a lot of the reasons behind homelessness have to do with mental health issues, drug addiction, and we need to make sure that besides getting them into a place that they have access to those services so that they can stay in a house, in some kind of shelter, and be productive people in society. So I think that's an important step, an important component of this is making sure that we have access to those services. Other things, I think one thing sometimes that we don't look a lot at is domestic violence, which is one of the top 5 reasons for homelessness in Minnesota. And I think we need to maybe look at some of those laws and make sure that we're providing also ways for people to get out of abusive relationships and prevent that as one of the root causes of homelessness too.
Thank you. And John.
Yeah, I'd echo everything the other two have said. I think access to affordable housing, ensuring that we have, and this is a problem in, like Heather said, I think we think about homelessness as a solely urban problem, and I don't think that's true. I know that's not true. I've seen neighbors, friends growing up who struggled with insecure housing and couch surfing and stuff like that, and it just looks a little different in rural areas a lot of the time. So ensuring that Heather had mentioned ensuring seniors can stay in their homes, keep costs down for them. Cutting that, I hate to harp, but cutting that Social Security income tax would keep some money in those folks' pockets. And when you're living on a fixed income, it goes a long way. The other piece too that Rob mentioned, mental health supports, and I absolutely echo that. I've seen. I used to volunteer regularly with some folks in the homeless community in Fargo Moorhead here, and that was the untreated mental health issues was tough to watch, and we need to do more to support our neighbors in that area.
All right, thank you. So Rob, the next question will begin with you. It's a kind of a 2-part question, but they definitely relate. What is your position on gun control and gun violence? What should Minnesota do to help prevent mass shootings?
Sure. Well, I'm in favor of common sense gun safety, but I also respect the Second Amendment. I'm a big fan of the First Amendment for freedom of speech, and so it'd be kind of hypocritical for me if I also didn't realize the Second Amendment does have a place in our society. Guns in Minnesota, obviously, hunting is a big part of our culture. We have guns, and I'm not certainly in favor of anybody coming to take away your guns, but I think there are some things we could do to strengthen up those laws, particularly around safety issues, and particularly in terms of background checks. I'm talking to a few prosecutors. The system we have for doing background checks is really pretty terrible. And the other thing is, if somebody fails one of those background checks, the police aren't notified of a person who has failed that background check. So I think there are things we could do there, and in terms of around safety, where we could find some consensus on this issue and move forward and help prevent some of these tragedies.
Thank you. John?
Yeah, so I grew up around guns. I grew up around hunting. It's just part of the fabric of rural culture in this area. So I very much am comfortable, familiar with guns. Minnesota's got a pretty robust background check system in place. I don't support any huge sweeping changes to that kind of stuff right now. As far as preventing gun violence, Rob talked about domestic violence in the last question, not this one, but I think it's relevant here too. I think red flag laws could be an area where we could potentially, as long as we're respecting folks' due process and not infringing on those Second Amendment rights, none of us want a domestic abuser to have access to a gun that they're going to then turn around and kill their partner. No one wants that. So I do think there's areas like that where we can find some commonality between folks who support lawful gun ownership and maybe more robust gun control. I think there's some, like Heather said, finding those slivers of commonality. I think there's some areas where we can absolutely do that in this arena.
Thank you. And Heather?
For me, it's protecting our kids. Suicide prevention is actually the lens that I look at this through. In rural Minnesota and in rural areas, the actual issue that we deal with is youth accidentally finding a loaded firearm and harming themselves or somebody else. And that's the area that I care the most about, and so safe storage in those areas so that we make sure that our littles who are exploring different houses, making sure if they're going over to friends' houses that there's safe storage there so that we just don't have these horrific accidents that are impacting rural Minnesota on a really regular basis. I know the greater idea of school shootings is also always on our mind, but when I look at this issue and this topic specifically, for me it's more about suicide prevention and keeping our littles safe in the homes of gun owners, because we know that many of us are gun owners and will continue to be gun owners. That's not what we're trying to change. That really, it's that safety component for me.
All right, thank you. So just a note I forgot to mention at the beginning, we had initially scheduled this to go until, I believe, 8:45. That was when, because we initially had been planning for more candidates, but since we had some that couldn't join us tonight, we are going to shorten it just because we only have the 3 candidates. So we'll do one more question and then do closing statements. So kind of more of like a fun kind of question. For our last one, what are your passion areas, and do you have any particular committees that you would like to serve on? And so, John, we'll start with you.
Absolutely. So I've talked a lot about family farming. That's a huge one. I've got that ag policy background to be immediately impactful in that area, I think, and ag would be the first committee I'd request. That would be number 1 on my list. As far as other things, education, obviously I'm an educator, so that is near and dear to my heart, although we do have Heather already serving on the higher ed committee ably, so that's awesome that we already have a voice there. But yeah, education, ag, those would probably be the top of my list. And then I'm a union member too, a union steward, so that labor piece would probably be a part of that too, the labor workforce, that arena. So.
Okay, thank you, Heather.
There's a whole lot to a passion point for me, but I would say in this work it's really representation. Representation matters in a whole lot of areas. We know that we do the best when our entire community is represented, and it's no secret that I am serving as one of the only Indigenous women in the legislature, and one of the things we were able to get done is we established the Murdered and Missing Indigenous Relatives Office for the entire state, which we're the first in the nation to do that. And so I think that matters when we have representation at the table, but more than that, it is higher education. Higher education changed my life dramatically because people believed in me before I even knew how to believe in myself. And I think that's how we make, the next generations thrive. And so for me, it's more than just, I already got myself on the committee, worked to get myself advocated on the conference committee. And for me, I guess the next passion point is being a chair in that element. One of the things that we had access to is Paul Marcourt was a wonderful chair for taxes. And when you're a chair, you end up in other conversations with leadership, and with losing both Representative Marcourt and Ken Eakin, I think it's important that we have somebody that really wants to step up in leadership, and I know that that's an area that I'm deeply passionate, knowledgeable about, and so for me that would be the continued passion that I would have in this space.
All right, thank you. Rob?
Sure. Well, I think I will echo off of what John said. The Ag Committee would certainly be a committee I would be interested in. The real reason that we're all here is because of agriculture. This is a great farming area, and agriculture is really important in western Minnesota. And I would also think a higher ed committee, given that we have the 3 institutions here of higher ed, would be an important committee to be on. And then, I am a meteorologist, and I do have some ideas as a scientist, and I think a citizen science person in the legislature might not be a bad thing. Heather and I have had discussions about some of the humorous talk that went on that was not very science-based. So a little dose of science would also be a good thing. And I will take the fun aspect of this. I am a really numbers kind of stats nerd, and my wife will attest to the fact that I have probably at times played a little too much of this statistic baseball game, but it's a good way, stress reliever for me. But so that's my fun thing.
All right, thank you. So this concludes the question and answer portion of the forum. We'd like to thank all the candidates for participating and the audience for submitting some really wonderful questions tonight. For those both in the audience here in person tonight and also watching the recording, the League of Women Voters has partnered again this year with Forum Communications to present the vote411.org Voters Guide. So there probably is right now a little widget on the forum's website that you can click on that will take you to that information. But also, if you just go to vote411.org and put in your address, it will populate your sample ballot for you. We'll show you who's on the ballot, the different issues. Can also show you, like in Minnesota, information on voter registration and where your polling place is. So a really fantastic resource for voters this election year. So we want to remind everyone, Election Day is November 8th. And then, so finally, you can stay tuned to the League of Women Voters Facebook page and our website as well for more information on upcoming events. And this is also the first in a series of several candidate forums. I think our next Moorhead night is, thank you, Barb, next Thursday. So we'll have the rest of the candidates, including Moorhead School Board, next Thursday, and one other race as well, whoever we did not get to tonight. City Council, thank you. So that'll be next Thursday, back here in the library, back in the magazine section. All right, so we will move on to the closing remarks. So Heather, we would begin with you. I do just want to share, if you had a closing remark prepared, feel free to just go with that. But there were a couple questions we didn't get to, so I just want to mention a couple of the topics in case you want to incorporate that into your answer. So people were asking about, concerns about Social Security being available for coming generations, climate change, and that Minnesota may have kind of fallen behind on some of those climate goals. And then also just kind of generally speaking, how would you advocate for greater Minnesota when you're in St. Paul? So those are a couple of questions we did not get to. So feel free to address those or not if you had something prepared. So Heather, you can start us off.
What's our time limit?
Oh, sorry, 1 minute.
Okay. It's good for us to know. So the main message that I want to leave is that in politics we feel really divided, and it gets really yucky, and I feel like it even almost becomes a bully game. And as somebody who really tries to advocate for coming together and being one community, the message that I really have is my message of hope in this community is lead with love. And so I hope that when we leave here, we understand that we may be divided in some of these topics and what we do, but at the end of the day, we're all here because we absolutely love this community and we want to be a voice for it. And I think that at the end of the day, we always have really difficult decisions to make, whether it's climate change, Social Security. Those things are all things we're hearing on the door too. But at the end of the day, I really believe that if we set our differences aside and just lead with love in some of those difficult conversations, and lead with our best self first, we're always better that way, and we can disagree on many things, but I think we can come to the commonality that when we care about each other, we do better. That's the only message. Thanks.
Thank you. Rob.
Sure. Well, again, I want to thank the League of Women Voters for putting this on. It's really important, as I think we've stated here tonight, to show up, to listen, to try to solve problems. And I'm very thankful, again, I can't say it enough, for Kent Eakin, Paul Marquardt. We have two great mentors, examples to lead by of how to represent this part of Minnesota. And it is a unique part. Minnesota's a big state, and our area is different from a lot of other parts of the state. And it's important to take that message with us to St. Paul to realize that not one size fits all for Minnesota, and especially when you're on the border with North Dakota, there are some special things that we need out here to be competitive and to keep that competition going. So I really want to be a voice for that going forward into the future. So again, that's one of the main reasons why I am running for this. And in terms of climate change, yes, we probably have fallen behind on a few of those things. I have all kinds of climate stats I'd be happy to rattle off with you sometime. Stop. As much as you wanted them, I know.
All right, John.
Thank you so much to the League of Women Voters for putting this on. Thank you to you all for showing up, to those who are maybe watching later. This semester I'm teaching Intro to American Government, and the message that I always try to impart to my students in that class, in addition to the basics of American government, is the importance of using your voice, of stepping up, being engaged civically, of taking part in this incredibly important democratic process. It's just so important. Forums like this are a critical part of it, which is, part of, I think, why three of us are so disappointed to be three and not six sitting up here tonight. But what we need is more of the leadership like that provided by Senator Eakin and by Representative Marquardt. We need folks who are going to focus on getting things done. For folks across the state of Minnesota, our district specifically, of course, but as a representative, as a senator, you have an obligation to the whole state to do what's going to be best for Minnesotans. So I hope that you all engage in this democratic process, and I'd love if we could earn your support. Thank you.
All right, thank you. We want to thank the candidates for attending. I also want to give a special thank you to Kathleen, our timer tonight. As moderators, the three of us switched off, but Kathleen timed every form tonight. So thanks, Kathleen. I don't think our candidates could have done it without you. And thanks, Bailey and Barb and everybody that helped collect questions and greet guests tonight. Thank you. Good night, everyone.